I'm going to get started with our application webinar. So thank you all for coming to the application walkthrough and joining us today to learn more about the DeGroote MBA programs. Just a couple more housekeeping things along with keeping yourselves on mute for the presentation. The session is also being recorded, and anybody who's registered for the session will have access to the recording as of tomorrow, so you'll be able to refer back to it if you need to. Additionally, we have live transcription enabled if you should need it, and if you do have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat. We do have one of our recruitment and admissions managers here today who can answer the questions right within the chat. If there are any questions that you'd like to ask in person, at the end of the session, we'll have a bit of a question and answer period where you're welcome to unmute yourself and then ask your question there. All right. So just to introduce myself, my name is Emily Vance, pronouns she, her. I'm the recruitment and admissions officer for the full-time MBA and the MBA with co-op. So I review all of the applications that will be coming in for these two programs for this next admission cycle. So needless to say, I quite literally see this application in my sleep, and I'm quite familiar with it from an admissions background. We do also have two student ambassadors here with us who we're going to be chatting with a little bit later to get a bit of more of that student perspective to the DeGroote application process. Before we get too far along, I want to ensure that we do acknowledge the land that McMaster resides on. We did have the Truth and Reconciliation Day fairly recently, but we want to ensure that we are not dedicating Truth and Reconciliation just to one day on the calendar, and that it is a full year, all the time commitment. So while not all of us might live in this area, if all goes well with your application, eventually you will be spending a lot of your time here. So we feel it's important to start our journey with you by acknowledging and recognizing that McMaster University is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee Nations, and within the lands protected with the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. And the agreement represents a covenant with nature, so take what you need, leave something in the dish for others, and keep the dish clean. And we hold a shared responsibility to take care of the land, its resources, and all the creatures that we share with it. I also want to ensure that we mention this scholarship opportunity. So this is the Indigenous Learners Award. So if you self-identify as Inuit, Métis, or First Nations, you're eligible to apply for this award. It covers the full cost of tuition, plus up to $15,000 in living expenses. So if you're interested in learning more about this award in any way, feel free to reach out to us at mbainfo@mcmaster.ca, and we'll be happy to chat with you about that. So this is our admissions team. So these are the people who are going to really be on the journey with you throughout your preparation journey with us. So starting on the left, we have Jen Dunk, who is our manager. She really drives the ship on all things recruitment and admissions for the MBA programs. Moving on, then we have our recruitment and admissions managers. As I mentioned, we have Ryan here with us today. Then there's also Viviani and Maria, and they're often going to be the first point of contact. Some of you might have been in touch with them already. And they're there to really help you figure out what's going to be the best program fit for you and help you with that pre-assessment process from the beginning. But you also hear from them quite a bit throughout the entire process. Moving down underneath, we have Carrie Donovan and Joella Clark. So they are graduate officers, and they really have their hands in many different areas of the application process, right from getting your initial documents at the beginning of the process to getting your official documents if you were lucky enough to be admitted into the program. And then in this kind of bottom corner, it's myself as well as Hanya. So we are both recruitment and admissions officers. Her prime focus is the accelerated and blended learning part-time MBA programs. We won't be focusing on those programs as much today, but keep in mind their round one deadline is coming up on November 1st, and there will be more webinars and information about those programs as we approach that date. So this is our agenda for what we will be discussing tonight. We will start by doing a bit of a program overview. So we'll be talking about the 2 programs of interest currently that have deadlines coming up quite quickly. So full-time and our MBA with co-op. We then will have we will talk about our upcoming round deadlines in addition to the deadline that's coming up next week. And then that's when we're really going to get into the bulk of our application walkthrough. So we're going to go step by step into the full process. What documents should you be getting prepared if you haven't already? What to expect from your application, and what kind of other additional aspects do you need to complete prior to being able to fully submit that application. Then we'll go over kind of what's next. What are the next steps after you've submitted your application, as well as after you have signed off from this call here today. That's when we'll hear from our student ambassadors to get their perspective on the application process, and then we'll end off with answering some questions that we weren't able to get to in the chat, or maybe some questions that we just want to talk about as a bigger group. So to first introduce our programs of interest for today, we have our full-time MBA. So this is our 20-month full-time program. And this program is really geared towards what we call our career drivers. So they might have a few years of work experience under their belt, and they know what direction they really want to go in, but they're needing something to kind of level them up and to help them kind of reach that next level of their career. In addition to this, it's also a really great option for those who are wanting to be in full-time study, have that quick return to market, but then also potentially get a little bit of work experience built right into their program. So what I mean by that is, in terms of the structure of the program, you'll have 2 academic semesters, so fall and winter, and then in the summer, currently you have the option of taking a break, a much-deserved break if you'd like. Then you also have the option of an optional internship for the summer. You do have the option to continue your studies and do classes. Just keep in mind that you'd want to kind of plan that out in the fall, because program or classes are not as available in the summer. That's something that you would want to
recording in progress.
That's something that you would want to touch base with your academic advisor about. Then we have our MBA with, just a reminder for everybody to mute themselves just to avoid any background noise. So we have our MBA with co-op program. So this is also a full-time program, but you'll notice it's a little bit longer. So it's 28 months. And the reason for that is you have 3 4-month-long work terms right embedded into the structure of your program. So by the end of the degree, you'll have a full year of Canadian work experience under your belt. So the way that structure kind of works is you start in your academic term, then you have a work term following that, and you continue to alternate until you wrap up the 28-month program. So this is really geared towards our new professionals. You can see on the slide that we see on average candidates coming in with 1 to 3 years of work experience. But it's important to acknowledge that we don't require any work experience for this program. So if you're a new grad, or maybe you're finishing up your undergrad, keep that in mind, that you don't require work experience to apply to the MBA with co-op program. And you'll also see for both of these programs, you do have the option to specialize in one of 6 areas starting in your second year. So sometimes students really like to have that option to kind of specialize and focus their degree on a particular area, whether it's strategic marketing or health services management, etc. But this is certainly not a requirement. Some students like to be able to kind of explore a little bit of everything within their degree and choose not to specialize, and that's also totally okay. So it's all up to you. Round deadline. So this is a slide that's important. So feel free to screenshot it, put these dates in your calendar if you would like. I know they're certainly in mine. So these are for the MBA, the full-time program, and the MBA with co-op. Our round 1 deadline is coming up October 11th. So that is a week today, which is very exciting. And then we have round 2 in November 28th, round 3 wrapping up on February 28th. If you are an international applicant wanting to apply in one of our later rounds, please note that this February 28th date is your last deadline to apply to the MBA at DeGroote. And then wrapping up round 4 for our domestic applicants on May 31st. Keep in mind for our international applicants, we try to get our We have our early deadline for round 3 because we're wanting to get your decisions out as soon as possible so that you can process visa and immigration things as early as possible. And then admissions decisions are made after the completion of each round. So once the round deadline has passed, that's when we'll get really into our application review, and then you can expect to receive an admissions decision within 6 to 8 weeks of the round deadline. So again, put these dates in your calendar. I will reiterate the round 1 deadline a lot here because it is coming up. So let's get started in terms of the actual walkthrough of the application. And it starts off really easy by just starting the application. We really encourage you to start it as early as possible, and I'll kind of touch on why in a little bit. But it never hurts to give yourself as much time as possible to apply. So an important thing to keep in mind is we only have September intakes. You will see on the start your application page the option to select January and May. Just know that you will not get very far. The application will kind of hit a wall at a certain point because we do not offer those for the MBA programs. So you'll have to select September. You can filter by business with that little checkbox. And then from there, you can select the Apply Now button that corresponds with the MBA program that you are interested in applying. And we continue to start it really easy for you by just asking for some personal info. So this is info you know, like your name and your birth date and all those kinds of things. And just a couple things to take note of here. In terms of your mailing address, as well as your email address, actually, we want to ensure that this is as accurate as possible because we do want to be able to get in contact with you if we need anything extra from your application. And yeah, so we want to make sure that these are as accurate as possible for the duration of your application. If there are any changes, if you move, if you have a change of email, just let us know as soon as you can, and then we can make that adjustment on our end. Additionally, for native language, so this indicates the first language that you have learned to communicate in. There are other opportunities in the application to indicate additional languages that you have learned, but for this one, we're just looking for that first language that you learned. And then for citizenship information, if you are a permanent resident, this is the part where you would be inputting your PR number as well as your date of arrival in Canada. If you're currently a student who's working towards your PR, just note that you will still have to apply as an international student. If then kind of throughout your time with us, you end up getting that PR status, just let us know, and then we can give you instructions on how to make that switch so that the domestic fees would then apply for your offer letter. And then lastly, the McMaster history. So have you ever applied to McMaster before? Have you ever attended a different program? Have you worked here? So that's just what that section is referring to there. The select program page. This is another one that is a very important slide. It's an important page to remember. And that is because by completing this page, this will then cue our team, the admissions team, to send you your Kira online interview. So once you select the MBA program that you would like to apply for, and then click continue, that will then cue us to send your Kira online interview invite. This is often a piece of the application that we get a lot of questions about, so I'll take some time to explain. So all MBA applicants must complete a Kira online interview before you can submit your application. And that is because once you complete your Kira interview, then there is a confirmation email that you receive that confirms, yes, you've completed your Kira, and that is a piece that you will have to include at a later stage of the application. So if you're taking notes, make sure you take note that the Kira needs to be completed prior to being able to completely submit your completed application. In terms of the step-by-step, as I said, you'll complete the select program page first by clicking continue. That'll cue us. And then within 1 business day, you'll receive an invitation from Kira. You'll get an email that gives you a nice blue button that says check-in. And this will allow you to access the Kira online platform where you would be doing an automated interview of 4 verbal questions and 1 written question. And then you'll have the opportunity to test your audio and your visual. You have the opportunity to do an unlimited attempt of practice questions. These aren't the questions that you would be asked in your actual Kira interview, but it'll give you a chance to get familiar with the platform. And then once you're ready, you can do your Kira interview, again, with the 4 verbal questions, 1 written, that are both automated and timed. And then once you've completed it, you'll get that confirmation email sent to your inbox. That is the email that you will want to screenshot to then upload to your materials. Another thing to kind of note with that, because that email is sent to you automatically through Kira, always make sure that you're checking your junk and your promo folders and your spam folders, just in case it gets lost in there, so that you can make sure you include it in your application. In this big red box here, you can see, kind of mentioned that applications need to be started by noon Eastern time, so Toronto time, on October 10th to receive your Kira invite in time. So because there's that one business day turnaround, we want to make sure you have lots of time to receive your invite, hopefully have some practice time before the deadline is up after October 11th. So make sure you start your application. You can really start it right now if you want, but if you want to wait, I don't know, till tomorrow, feel free. But as long as it is started by noon on October 10th, then we can guarantee that you will receive your Kira invite in time for the round 1 deadline. So moving on to the education section. So when you are in the application, you'll have the chance to add one of these nice little text boxes for each institution that you have ever attended or are currently attending. So keep in mind that we also want you to complete this section, even if it's an institution that you did not complete the degree. So using myself as an example, I have attended 3 institutions. I have completed 2 degrees. So I have 1 degree that's incomplete, and I have no intention of ever completing it. So in those cases, I would still want to fill this out 3 times for all 3 institutions. But for that 1 institution that I didn't complete the degree, I can just indicate no degree awarded or expected. I don't want it. So keep that in mind. Also, if you are currently in the process of completing a degree, there's an option that should say like in progress or something like that. But yeah, you'll complete all the information for that institution. Please try to keep the dates as accurate and as aligned with what your transcript says as possible, in terms of like convocation dates, when you started the program and things like that. Additionally, if the exact name of your degree doesn't appear in this dropdown, that is okay. There should be an option to select some sort of kind of other category. And then within the area of study section, that's where you can put kind of the more specific phrasing of your degree name. You'll also see that at the bottom, that's where you will be attaching your transcripts for those institutions. So please make sure that the file that you are uploading matches the institution that you have at kind of that top section of the text box. And then you'll save, and then you can add as many institutions as you attended from there. English language proficiency is the next section. This will relate mostly to our international applicants. But in terms of approved tests, we do accept the IELTS and the TOEFL tests. So for IELTS, we're looking for an overall score of 7, and for TOEFL, an overall score of 100. So in the application, you'll see the question of, did you complete a degree with English as the official language of instruction? If not, then you can select no, and then that's where you'll be able to input your scores and then upload your test report that you would have received from IELTS or TOEFL. If you have studied a minimum of 3 years at a university where English is the language of instruction, this requirement can be waived, but we do need to receive proof from your institution that this is the case. And this can look like a couple different ways. So on your transcript itself, it might be in the fine print somewhere. Sometimes it'll say medium of instruction English. So that's one way. Alternatively, you could reach out to your institution and they would have some sort of kind of standard letter that would indicate what the language of instruction was for your degree. You can then merge that document with your transcript to keep them all in one nice little package, and then that way we can ensure that that requirement is waived. Otherwise, though, we would require the IELTS or TOEFL if you didn't study a minimum of 3 years at an English-speaking institution. So our program-specific questions. One thing to take note with this, why we kind of we'll continue to urge people to start their application as soon as possible, is because there are some sections that are nice and quick. It's just a matter of inputting information that you already know at the top of your head. But sometimes there's sections like these that require a little bit more work. So we don't require a statement of intent or a statement of interest or a writing sample, but we do have these questions that will allow us to get to know you a little bit better, get to know your background, and they are in the form of kind of long answer written questions. So just keep in mind, this is another area that you might need to have a little bit of prep before you're able to fully submit that application. To give you an idea of kind of themes that we would be looking at, and questions to kind of ask yourself as you're going into the application anyway, why do you want an MBA? So how would an MBA contribute to your future goals, your career aspirations? What are those kind of short and long-term goals that you have? And how would an MBA help contribute to you reaching those goals? Additionally, why the DeGroote MBA specifically? So what about DeGroote really spoke to you? Why the DeGroote MBA specifically? And how could you then contribute to your cohort that you would be coming into? In addition to these questions, there's a couple other themes that we would be looking at. So one we'd be looking for is your experience with quantitative concepts. And I'll explain this one a little bit, because this one also can bring up some other questions. So this is a question that is mandatory to answer for really anybody applying, but especially for those who receive our GMAT waiver for 2024, which I'll be explaining in a little bit. But just to explain this question a little bit more, I don't think necessarily it's a secret that MBAs will contain some sort of quantitative work and concepts. So this question is just to gather some context and a better understanding of what kind of understanding you have of these concepts coming into the program. So it's not there to be intimidating to anybody who might not be coming from maybe a business background. But again, it's just for us and for the admissions committee to get a bit of a context of where are you at coming into the program. And it's by no means a make or break of your application. So wanted to make that clear. But it's also a good chance to look back at your past experience and notice that you might have a lot more quantitative work than you thought. So whether it's in volunteer work, extracurriculars, have you ever maintained or worked within a budget? Did you take any courses during an undergrad? Maybe a stats course that I think could kind of contribute to some of those concepts. So yeah, there's lots that could fit into this question. If anybody has any questions about this question, you're welcome to reach out to us at our admissions email, which we'll give you today. And then lastly, we have, in terms of the MBA questions, you have an opportunity to also provide some kind of bigger context for your application if it's required. This is a question that is not necessarily mandatory, but if there's anything in your application that you think would benefit from some additional context, whether it's gaps on your transcript or your resume in terms of work gaps, lower grades where something was going on, that's your opportunity to kind of best represent your application beyond what's kind of already provided in your documents. Again, it's not a mandatory question. You're also, you can provide as much detail as you would like, but just keeping in mind that it is something that is reviewed by myself, admissions committee members. So only put as much detail as you're comfortable with us reading through. The last question that you'll see in here is about graduate residence. Just asking, are you interested in graduate residence? Just note that this is not you then applying for graduate residence, and it also is important to note that MBA students do have some spots in graduate residence, but not a lot. So we want to make sure that we make it clear that graduate residence on campus shouldn't be treated as the first choice and the only choice for housing. And we will be hosting more webinars in the future about kind of housing within the areas, but just kind of keep that in mind with that question. All right, so test scores. So the applicable test that we would be looking for a full-time and MBA with co-op is the GMAT, and then in lieu of that, it would be the GRE, an MCAT as long as it's still valid, as well as a CFA level 2. So This is where you would be adding kind of your individual scores and percentiles for those tests. If you are a recipient of our GMAT waiver for 2024, within the document that you would have received when receiving your GMAT waiver, there's also instructions in there about how to accurately fill out this section. So make sure that you are reviewing that. If you get stuck here, just review your waiver document and it'll give you those instructions there. And one other thing to note with test scores that this year, I know both GMAT and GRE have some new tests coming up. So there's the GMAT Focus and then the shorter GRE test. And just know that we do also accept those results. I know that they'll probably start coming in more in the winter. But yeah, just in case those are tests that you want to pursue, we will still accept those results as well. The GMAT waiver. So I've referenced it a couple times, but I'll give a little bit of an explanation here. So for fall 2024, we do have a GMAT waiver. So if you are interested in seeing if you're eligible for the GMAT waiver, we do have a pre-assessment form that is on our website right near the top of our apply page. And the eligibility criteria are also on our website. So feel free to review those to see if you are eligible. And then you can fill out the pre-assessment form to see if you're eligible for the GMAT waiver. And it also will give us a chance to pre-assess your profile a bit to see which program is going to be the best fit for you and give some advice in that area. If you are approved for the GMAT waiver, as I said, you'll receive a kind of certificate within your email, which you can then upload at a later part of your application. So again, make sure you're checking those junk and spam folders. Sometimes they can get stuck in there. So especially if you haven't heard from us in a little bit after filling out a form, feel free to check those folders. And then if you still can't find it, then reach out to us and we will look into it more. If you do not receive the GMAT waiver, that doesn't mean that you cannot apply. You're still welcome to apply, obviously. You just would need to submit a GMAT or GRE or CFA Level 2 or MCAT with your application in order for it to be considered complete. We did also have our round 1 GMAT waiver deadline just passed as of September 27th. So what this deadline means is if you submitted your pre-assessment form prior to this date, so before September 27th, you will have a decision in time for your round 1 deadline in order to completely submit your application. Again, if you have submitted prior to this date and you still haven't heard from us, maybe just reach out after checking your junk and spam folders to see if there's an email from us. If you submitted after this date, we are still going to continue to process these pre-assessments and we're going to try our best to get as many done as possible. However, we're just unable to guarantee that a decision will be received in time for the round 1 deadline due to the increase of volume that we have received. So just keep that in mind. So for the work experience section, this is where you'll be able to detail all your past and present employers and employment opportunities that you've had. One tip that I would give for this section is to actually complete your resume first. That's one of our required documents, is a completed resume. So do that part first, and then you can just copy and paste the information from your resume into this section. That will save you a bit of time, hopefully, but then also it will ensure that the information both in the work experience section of your application and your resume are aligned and accurate to each other. So keep that in mind when you get to the work experience section. References. This is also a section where we sometimes will get some questions, so I'll spend a little bit of time on here. Within your actual application, what you will be providing is the details and the contact information for your 2 references. So for full-time and co-op, we accept any combination of academic and professional references. If you are applying with professional references, just keep in mind that we prefer for them to be current or past supervisors or managers, and especially people who have worked directly with you and can speak to your skills and accomplishments. It can feel like a good idea to put a CEO's name in here, but if they haven't directly worked with you, then it might just be a good idea to reevaluate your reference choices. So just ensure that they're people that can really speak to your abilities, projects you've worked on, and your ability to be a good MBA candidate with the group. So one little also kind of tip in terms of the application system, when you go to add a recommender, it will automatically select academic for you. But if you do not want to submit an academic reference and you want to instead select professional, just make sure that you select the correct field up here. If once you apply, you notice like, oh no, I've selected the wrong field, that's okay. You can reach out to us and then we can see if we can do a little switcheroo there in the back end. In terms of the email, you can see that there's a little note here that it is highly recommended for the recommender's institutional or corporate email address to be used. We do know that sometimes people change jobs, sometimes they change institutions, so the email that's kind of associated with the job that you worked, the company that you worked at with them might not be the email that would work for a recommender, or maybe there's security that would make it that they can't receive emails from us. If that's the case, then it's okay if it is a different kind of email. It's just preferred for it to be that institutional or corporate email if it can be. Then once you click that send to recommender button, it automatically will send an email to your recommender with a link to an online e-reference form. This is where they will be able to complete their online e-reference form and speak to your lovely accomplishments and abilities. So it's important to note that no reference letter is required. It's just the completion of that e-reference form, because we have certain questions that we want to be sure that we ask our recommenders, and that we can kind of help give recommenders a little bit of guidance in terms of what information we're looking for. So we do not require any additional letters from them. In terms of materials that you will be needing to kind of gather in addition to the information for your application, this is a good slide to maybe screenshot if you need. Some of them we've gone over, but just to kind of give you an overall snapshot of all of the additional documents that you would need, they're here in one slide for you. So in terms of education, we talked about the transcripts for each post-secondary institution you attended. If you graduated from those institutions, also having proof of that graduation. Sometimes that will be right on your transcript. It'll say like date conferred or something like that. And sometimes it's an additional kind of certificate of completion. In that case, you can kind of merge them together into one PDF document. Same as the English language instruction proof. If there is a letter from your institution that goes along with that, you can merge that together as well. The English language proficiency test scores, we talked about that as well, as uploading that test report in that section if applicable. And then in one of the last pages of your application, you'll hit the upload materials section. That's where you would be uploading your GMAT, or in lieu of tests, the test results, or your GMAT waiver if you have received one. That's also where you will upload your resume. So we do have a template that we highly recommend for students to use when applying to our programs. And that's really our way of kind of telling you this is the information we're looking for from your resume. It also helps with the efficiency of the review process when you use the templates. We really do highly encourage students to use it. It'll also save you time in the future in terms of creating this new resume. So keep in mind also that there might be sections of this template that you don't have information to add in there. That's okay. You don't have to have every possible heading that's in our resume template filled out. You can also add more headings and more sections if you'd like, if they aren't in our template. So it's a good starting off point that we highly recommend students to use for their application. And then last but certainly not least is the Cura interview completion confirmation email. So that is the email that you will receive automatically once you have fully completed your Cura online interview. And the last steps of the actual application, or some of the easiest steps, is just your electronic signature that you just have to type out to kind of declare and approve some terms and conditions and all that good stuff. And then there's a review page where you can kind of do one last check to make sure that everything is in order in your application. If there is anything missing, it'll show up in big scary red letters, and then you can go back, see kind of what was missing and what needs to be input instead. If you get all the way to the review page and you're like, I think I really just need another day to look over this, hopefully that's not on the round deadline. That's why we say apply early. But if you do need to kind of have another day to gather up some of your documents or anything like that, that's okay. You can always save for later and it'll save your progress there. But once everything is kind of in order, you've confirmed that you have everything complete in your application, then there will be a nice good little submit button that you can select, and it'll then take you over to the payment page where you will pay the $150 application fee, which is mandatory for all of our applications. For our co-op applicants, you aren't quite done yet. Once you've fully submitted your application, you may be invited to an additional interview, which is 30 minutes. It's a one-on-one interview with a member of our career and professional development team. This would happen after the submission of your application. So if you are within Ontario, these interviews will be taking place in person on campus within our Burlington campus. If you are outside of Ontario, then it would be taking place through Zoom, but still one-on-one with one of our CPD staff members. When you receive your invitation, this will come through your email. So again, make sure you're checking those emails. You will then have 3 days from receiving that email to confirm your invitation or to select a time slot if you are doing a virtual interview. You can see on the side here again, check those junk folders. That's kind of just good practice for life, but make sure that you're always checking those throughout your application process. And then in terms of how you can kind of best prepare for these sorts of interviews, the advice we usually give is practice behavior-based interview questions. If you do a quick Google of these, you'll get lots of examples of them, and then lots of time to practice those as well. What is next from here? Now that I have gone through the entire application process, what can you do? You can start your application. Again, you can really do that today if you would like. Just right through our website that you can see linked there. A reminder of our upcoming deadlines. October 11th is the big one that is coming up soon. We do highly recommend students to apply in our earlier rounds as much as possible if you can. We are a limited seat enrollment program, so that is when the most spots are available. That's also when the most scholarship money is available. So if you're able to apply in those early rounds, and October 11th is that first opportunity to get your application in and reviewed by us. If you have questions beyond today, I'm sure you will. I've talked a lot, but I'm sure that there's going to be information that I didn't cover. So if you have questions, you're welcome to reach out to either mbainfo@mcmaster.ca if you are getting your application together, or if you've submitted your application, then you can reach out to us at mbaadmissions@mcmaster.ca. Either way, you will get us and we will respond back to you. And then we do also have some social media channels that you can follow DeGroote to see kind of what our students are up to and what kind of programming is going on there. Okay, so I'm going to welcome our 2 student ambassadors to join us. They've been listening in the background, obviously, but I'll get them to unmute themselves and introduce themselves. If I can just get both of you maybe to share your names and then the program that you are in, as well as when you applied for the DeGroote MBA. Whoever wants to go first.
Yash, could I request you to go first, please? Thanks.
Oh, absolutely, go for it.
All right, guys, I'm Yash Kapta. I'm a full-time MBA student, and right now I'm specializing in finance, graduating next year. And yeah, I applied last September. So yeah, I applied in February and got through the admission process. And yeah, right now I'm here.
Hi everyone, my name is Kadamji. I applied in the 3rd round and got through almost at the last minute for my MBA with co-op program, and I will be graduating in December of this year.
Amazing. Thank you both for joining. It's always great to have that student perspective in our webinars, and I really appreciate you both being here. I really love it. I just had kind of one overall question that you're welcome to kind of branch off into other pieces of advice that you have. But I'm just curious, do you have any kind of advice or tips for anybody who's considering applying to a DeGroote MBA and kind of a branch off of that is, was there anything that you kind of learned throughout the process that you wish that you had learned earlier that you think would be helpful for those who are applying now? So any kind of general advice based off of your experience applying to these programs. I don't know which of you wants to go first this time. We'll see.
I can go first this time. So my suggestion would be that the admissions team is extremely, extremely helpful. And throughout my process, at least if I was not sure about any aspect of the process, they were very responsive on email. There is an extensive brochure as well that I referred to. Some advice I would give is just try to apply on time and stick to the deadlines, because the sooner you apply, the better it is for you. And that's all I can think of.
Amazing. Thanks so much for sharing and saying that we're so nice. I didn't make you say that, but that was nice to hear. All right, Yash, you have something to share?
Yeah, kind of a similar story, but I was the person who kind of applied at the last moment. So I don't want other people to repeat the same mistakes that I did. So try to have a week or so if you're an international student. So we need to get our transcripts as well, right? And then start applying for visa. So apply well in advance. And another tip that I would really want everyone to know is that practice your Kira interviews because I had to. I'm not really sure about how camera friendly you are, but I don't really understand these lightings and angles and audio. So it really helps if you kind of practice a little bit, but you don't really have to be too nervous about it. Yeah, it's not that difficult. Kira interviews and questions are pretty much normal. They are not really rocket science. So just be confident and be real, however you are, right?
I love that. Definitely overall message of applying as early as possible. I'm feeling very validated in that you both said that as well. And yeah, for the Kira, that's often something that can bring some anxiety as we kind of lead up to it. But just know that these two went through it and they survived and they made it all the way through. Yeah, definitely practice is one of the best pieces of advice I'd say as well for the Kira. Just looking at our time, we do have time for one more question if you two are up for it. I'm also just curious about when kind of approaching the graduate application process, what were kind of the considerations that you had when selecting the program of choice for you?
I guess it's going to be my turn first this time.
Sure, taking turns, love it.
All right. Basically, I was spending a lot of time behind my background checks, and I'm a little bit analytical in that way. So my three criteria that I could come up with were return on investment. Good return on investment is always the best form of education, and probably this might be my last degree that I might be doing, right? And cost of living is another bullet that I really wanted to calculate about. And Hamilton is really the best city for students, probably the most affordable city in the GTA area, right? And the third point was the proximity to GTA area itself. And that really helps. So because when you're looking for the co-op opportunities or your internships when you are on your summer vacation, you really want to be in GTA area because there are multiple opportunities at your door. So yeah, it really helps.
So Yash has given a very detail-oriented answer. So I kind of went around it in an opposite direction. I'm very much into marketing, and I wanted a program where I could experience the culture because marketing and culture is very much correlated. So I was looking specifically at MBA with co-op programs, and DeGroote was ranked one of the highest, which is why I ended up taking this course. As Yash mentioned, cost of living is also a consideration, so I can vouch for the fact that the co-op pay does help with that. It's not significant, but when you have to pay for your own tuition as well as your cost of living, every penny counts. So those were my two considerations. I also spoke to a lot of alumni, and some of the warmest alumni I've spoken to have been from DeGroote. I did not get responses from so many universities, but every DeGroote alumni that I spoke to responded to my message or apologized to me. So that kind of gave me an insight into the kind of student body I would be networking with. So those were my considerations.
Thank you both so much for sharing. It's always great to hear what your experience is from the student perspective. I only know it from my little admissions box, so it's really nice to hear you sharing with the next group of students. So thank you both so much. We are going to get into just kind of our general questions time period. So I'm going to stop the recording before we get into questions, just so that we have that excluded. Just 1 second here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. Recording stopped. There we go. All right, so I'm sure that based off of the number that I can see so far in the chat, since I haven't looked at it in a little while, I can see that there's lots of activity that's been happening in there. I know that we had Ryan here with us, obviously, to answer a lot of the questions in there. Just in terms of any questions from the chat, was there anything that has yet to be answered, Ryan, as far as you know?
It'd be really helpful if our ambassadors could speak to their experience with the Kira interview. Yash, you commented on it a little bit, but yeah, a few questions about what to expect and how to best prepare.
Whoever would like to take it away.
I guess it was pointed to me, so I'll have to take the bullet. I don't really remember all my questions, but most of them were like related to my experiences. Some of them were related to the leadership opportunities that I might have taken and performed at the workplace. Another one was about it wasn't really difficult, but yeah, these are questions which are open-ended, and they really want to know how you are thinking, if you're articulating your thoughts enough or not, right? So it wasn't really rocket science, but yeah, you should practice in front of a mirror. That's what I did. Don't shy away from the camera. Now we are living in the world of social media. I don't really use social media that much, but yeah, still I have decent following on LinkedIn, so do connect on LinkedIn. Please, if you have any questions, please connect with the DeGroote ambassadors. We are happy to help you people.
Thank you, Yash. So with respect to my Kira experience, even I don't remember much of it because the more daunting aspect was the MBA with co-op interview, which was approximately 30 minutes. And the admissions team was kind enough to coach you before that interview. But the Kira interview was very short, is all I remember. And I was able to redo certain aspects of it as well as practice it, while the MBA with co-op interview, you are kind of, it's similar to a co-op interview. Like if you were applying for a co-op, you would face similar questions. So it was a 30-minute interview. For Kira, my advice would be similar to Yash. Just practice.
Yeah, great. Yeah, in terms of kind of also like how to prepare for content, it's all information about you. It's information about your experiences, how you have handled certain situations, how you would handle situations if they were to come up, based off of the experiences and skill set that you have already built up. So the Kira questions are not going to be there to trick you in any way. They're all there just to give you a chance to tell us about you a bit more. Was there anything else from the chat initially that...
If I applied for Alaska by road,
what did they say that I...
All right. Well, then maybe we'll go to... We have a couple raised hands here that we can kind of address, and then as things come into the chat, we can answer them there or answer them kind of all together. I see 2 hands. Isaac, I don't know who had their hand up first. If you know who had their hand up first, feel free to let me know. But I see an Isaac with a hand up currently.
Hi, Amy. Good evening.
Hello.
I hope I can be heard.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, so my question will be on the GMAT waiver.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I sent you the pre-assessment, and if I should re-echo my details. So I have almost 8 years of working experience. And then I remember my GPA score was around 3.7. So when the response came, I was told that the full-time MBA might not be the best fit for me, all because of my working experience. Then I later explained that on my CV, I had some job gap whereby, due to 1 or 2 reasons, I was off the working environment for a while. So in effect, I was later told that I should just apply since the decision is taken on case-by-case basis. I don't remember receiving the GMAT waiver mail. So I wanted to know, do I still have a chance to try? Although I have started, but I haven't submitted it yet. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the question. So just to clarify, you got responses just in terms of your profile, but are waiting to hear back about the waiver result. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, please. I actually didn't get the waiver results.
Okay. We can definitely look into that. I will take your name down, and then we can take a look through all of our pre-assessments that we have, and I can definitely personally look into it tomorrow morning just to confirm where that's at in our process, so that you can get that response well before our deadline. So thank you for bringing that to attention. Appreciate it. Alrighty. I also see a hand up. The name is just user. I don't know who that is though. So if you are a user, feel free to unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Hi.
Hello.
Similar along the lines of Isaac there, but without the waiver. I just want to clarify some admissions requirements that are kind of nebulous based off of a pre-assessment I got done. I'm coming from a non-business background with a 3-year undergraduate, but I have 7 years of management experience and military officer enrollment. Is this something that do I qualify with this kind of background alongside a GMAT that was done, or do I just not bother applying because I have a 3-year?
Ryan, I saw you unmuted yourself. Is that because you're about to answer?
I was going to jump in and just say, if folks have questions about their personal profile, I'm more than happy to review. What we can do, we can actually review your resume and your LinkedIn transcripts, and then we can give you a more accurate answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put our general inbox email in the chat here. And feel free to reach out there, and we'll be happy to get back to you tomorrow. And yeah, we just want to make sure we give you an accurate answer.
And just a small question with one of the slides you showed. It said if you took an online GMAT, your AWA score, enter a 0.
I think I lost the last part of your question in terms of sound. Hello? All right. Hopefully we can get back to that. Yeah, I missed the last little part of your answer. You're welcome to put it in the chat. Oh, Mike died. I know that. Yeah, feel free to ask in the chat, and then Ryan can address it there. But thank you so much for your questions and for attending. All right, I think I saw Catherine as the next hand up. Yeah,
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. That was awesome. I just have a really, really quick question. Do you know what's the average admission GPA from last year?
From last year specifically, I'd have to look a little bit for that info. But in terms of what our kind of minimum requirement or like competitive GPA that we have listed on our website, McMaster operates on a 12-point scale, so it would be like an 8 out of 12, or like a 3 out of 4, I believe it was. So yeah, on our website, it lists kind of what we would consider our competitive GPA. Keep in mind, though, that if you are looking at what is listed as that competitive GPA and it makes you feel nervous about your own grades, just keep in mind we do a holistic admissions process. And what that means is we look at all aspects of your application. And so it could be, if you're worried about grades in one area, there are other areas of your application that could kind of help strengthen your application more. So when you are looking at our requirements on our website in terms of GPA and GMAT scores and things like that, don't let that discourage you by any means, because we do look at all aspects of the application. Every aspect of your application has value and has eyes on it. So just keep that in mind when thinking GPA.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, I just want to clarify this. So I see the minimum requirement for GPA is 3 out of 4. And then, so is that also the competitive score for GPA? One is mentioned as minimum GPA, and then you mentioned the competitive score. I'm not sure if 3 is good enough. It's good for is competitive enough?
Good question. Every cohort is different, so it really depends on the quality and quantity of the applicants for that year. So it's difficult to say for sure, give you a magic number to reach, which I know is not a very satisfying answer. But it really just depends on the cohort. So I would say if you are curious about kind of if these programs are going to be the best fit for you, reach out to us or fill out a pre-assessment, and we would be looking at things like your resume as well as your transcript. So you're welcome to reach out to us, and we can kind of look at that on a more personal basis, like Ryan mentioned.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for coming. All right. I see a Tanya, hand here.
Hi, good evening. So please, thank you so much for the session. It's been really insightful. My question is with respect to the program-specific questions on why MBA and why DeGroote. I just want to understand if there's any word limit or an ideal number of words in which the question should be answered.
That is a great question. So there are 2 questions in there that kind of speak to those themes. Both of those have a word limit of 550. And so just keep that in mind when you're kind of drafting it out. If you're somebody who likes to kind of draft things out in a separate document, keep that in mind. But within the actual application, it'll also show you kind of what your word count is as you're typing. So yep, for the questions that are around those themes, 550 for each of those questions.
Thank you.
No problem. Just checking in on the chat. Were there any chat questions, Ryan, that we wanted to kind of bring forth to the bigger group?
Coming in here regarding GPA and whether your GPA makes you eligible. I just want to remind folks that our admission process is completed holistically. So everything that is there, we are looking at absolutely everything. So don't feel as though there is just one thing that's going to make you a good or strong candidate.
Thank you. Great points. Okay, I see a hand for Steve.
Hi, thanks for the information. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
I just want to ask about the references. So how many are there a limit to the web reference when you submit the application online, and if I want to add, I think I heard it was 2, but if I want to add, are there possibility to add a third reference on the application?
Great question. So in terms of the amount that are required, it is just 2. What I would suggest is, rather than kind of going above the amount of references, just really trying to find the 2 people who are going to give you represent you the most strongly in your application. That would be my suggestion, is kind of really focusing on the quality of the reference rather than quantity. with that said, if after selecting 2 references, you find that maybe one of your references ended up not being able to do this for you, things can come up at any time. So if they don't have the time to do that and you have a third one that you would like to kind of tag in instead, just let us know and we can add that to your application and then send them the e-reference form that they would need. So again, only two are mandated in terms of 2 are required for the application, and would suggest kind of focusing on just finding your 2 strongest and then going ahead with those. That's what I would suggest anyway.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. All right. Next up, I see a Sarosh.
Hi there. I just had a question about actually the math question where we have to explain like our math history. And it's also written like arithmetic, algebra, probability, and statistics, and the types of things that we can talk about for each one of those. I'm just kind of confused because I don't want it to be repetitive and take up, so much of the word limit. So what's your advice on this question? Do you want us to talk about how we used these methods like in our classes or our projects or our labs and things like that, or you want us to get into like our depth of knowledge in these like categories? So I'm kind of just confused on those 2 parts.
Sure. Great. It's a great question. So in terms of I'll focus on like the academic side of like if there are academic examples of when you've kind of explored those concepts or been exposed to those concepts, all we would need is really like the course code for like what course did you explore those concepts in. So if it is around like probability, these are the courses that we address those, and you don't need to really expand that much deeper in terms of like the individual projects academically that you did. It's enough to just have the course codes there if there are some. And then in terms of if it's kind of beyond in terms of extracurricular, volunteer, and work experience, don't feel pressure to go like super in depth or even to mention every single quantitative concept that's listed there. Some of them you just might not have an example for, and that is okay. Just kind of to reiterate, it's really just to kind of get a concept of where are you coming into the program, but it is not a question that is necessarily evaluated in a way that's going to affect the result of your application, if that makes sense. So provide as much detail as you want to, but I guess like don't feel pressure to really go above and beyond to explain every single one of those concepts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, I see Julia.
Hi, I just have a quick question about the references, and I'm not sure if you guys already answered this, but I was just wondering if we already sent the references, the e-reference to like the academic and like professional ones, is it okay if like they only submit it after we submitted like the whole application, or does it have to be like before we submit it? If that makes sense.
That's a perfect question, and I meant to mention it earlier, so thank you so much, Julia. Yeah, in terms of kind of timeline to provide your references, so that's one good thing to note in terms of kind of setting reminders for your references. That's up to you folks to remind your references and send those kinds of reminders. And your references do have 10 days from receiving their e-reference form to complete it. So what that means is if you submitted it today and like submitted that section today, they have 10 days from today. If you submit it on the round deadline, they still have 10 days from the day that they received their e-reference form. So it's okay if those references are received before the round deadline or after the round deadline. It's more around that 10-day period of receiving their e-reference form. Now, again, things can come up and deadlines can kind of go out of our peripherals sometimes, especially when we're dealing with professionals and managers and all those kinds of things. So if your reference goes beyond that 10 days, just reach out to us and we can see how we can ensure that they can still submit what they need to submit. But in order to kind of avoid delays and all those kinds of things, 10 days from receiving their e-reference form, it should be complete. completed.
Okay, and then worst case scenario, because I know like my prof is like really busy, and I'm not sure if you like received my email yet, but worst case, like, can I resend like the e-reference and then count that date as like the 10 days?
That's a good question. We wouldn't necessarily be able to resend it, but we can look into like how we can like either extend it, or if it's seeming like that, if it seems like that professor just is not having the time to really dedicate to you, because we want to make sure that as much as they have time to just complete the form, you want to make sure that they have time to really brag about you and say all the great things about you. So if it turns out if they find that they don't have the time, then that's again when you can reach out to us, and then we can if you have another reference in mind, we can add them. But yeah, if it seems like you're having any kind of issues with that 10-day deadline, just reach out to me, and then we can work something out for sure.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. So Roche, I see your hand is still up, but I'm not sure if that is from before or if you have another question.
No, it was from before, sorry.
That's okay. I do it all the time. So it's all good. Okay, Lewis has a hand up.
Yep. Hi, thank you for your sharing. So I just have the questions about the reference to how long will it like approximately take to complete the form so that I can like inform my professor about the time commitment?
That's a good question. So how long will it take the actual recommender to complete their e-reference form? That's what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great question. It'll be one of those unsatisfying answers again, because it really depends on the reference, I would say, in terms of how much time they have and all those kinds of things. What I will say is there are a combination of various kind of short to long answer questions that they would have to answer. So I would say just kind of the general advice would be for them to just like make sure that they give themselves time. Like maybe it really depends on how thorough that reference wants to be. But it's not something that I would say can be completed by any means in like a quick 15-minute break in between meetings. Like they would really want to dedicate some time to it to make sure that they can think back on their experience with you and dedicate that time that you deserve in that reference. So a bit of a vague answer, but I would just say ensure that they give themselves enough time to really think about it, and that it isn't just something that falls in between meetings on their calendar, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's great. And do we have the confirmation when they finish the form?
You would be receiving something when they complete something. Like, so when they complete their e-reference form, you'll get like a very brief general McMaster email to say so-and-so has completed an e-reference form for your application. That's another one of those emails that could end up in a spam folder. But if you're ever unsure if both of your references have done their part, on your status page, which you will be able to kind of check on the status of your application throughout the processing time with us, you'll be able to see if they are a big red X, meaning they have not yet submitted their form, or they're a nice green check mark, and in which case we have received the form from them. So that's another place that you can check. When in doubt, if from the status page it's still not clear, you can always ask me, and I'm able to check in to see who has submitted their reference, and can also send them some reminders through our system if needed as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Nope. Yeah. Okay, so Mehan, another hand up.
Hello. So I just had a kind of a concern regarding my application. So I had actually submitted my transcripts back in like August, and I received an email back saying that I was approved for GMAT waiver, but there wasn't really anything attached to the email. It was just the text of the email said you were approved for a waiver, and you had mentioned earlier in the webinar that we're required to submit some kind of document, and I'm just not really sure what document we're supposed to submit because I didn't really receive anything.
Sure, great question. Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but within the email, is there a link to a document that then we would download?
Yeah, there's a button.
A button. Perfect. So I would say look back on that email to see if you can see some sort of button that indicates GMAT waiver or GMAT waiver approved, and then it should open up to a document. If after this amount of time you have difficulty finding that email, Again, look back through junk and all those good old folders, but if after doing some extensive searching you still have a hard time finding it, reach out to us and we can look into that for you to make sure you have everything that you need.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem. Julia, is your hand up from before, or do you have another question?
No, I have another question.
Perfect.
I also have an answer to like the previous question. I also got like the same email. And if you actually click like the GMAT waiver approved with the exclamation mark, it takes you to the form directly. Yeah. And then, yeah, no worries. And then the question that I had was, I was wondering how many questions there are that like our academic or like professional reference has to answer.
That is a good question that I don't know the immediate answer off my head, but I believe it is between 3 and 5.
Okay, so it wouldn't just be like one document that they would just submit for like the reference?
So it's like an online form that they have to submit, so it's not like it's an additional document that they have to attach or anything like that. Yeah, it's just kind of like one online form that has a combination of questions that will help kind of direct their recommendation for you.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, I don't think I see any other hands, but was there anything that's come up in the chat in this time that we would like to discuss all together?
A couple questions about references. The one here, if they don't complete it after 4 rounds, we won't let it get that far. We will reach out to you, we'll reach out to the reference, we'll allow you to support with another reference, lots of opportunity before that.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Okay. All right. So I will be hanging out here in the Zoom room for a little bit if there's any other questions. Otherwise, the kind of content part of tonight is complete, and we release you out into the world to start your applications. Keep in mind, we have a long weekend coming up, so try to get those applications started before then, if you can. And if you have any questions, you know where to reach us at our email addresses. Yeah, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, you're free to go.
Hi, sorry, I had a really quick question.
Sure.
So I submitted the request for both of my references, except I clicked a professional in, I think it was referenced in lieu of like an academic, and he's a pharmacist and he's a professional, and I work with him, so I don't know what to do now because he's already finished it and I can't make him like redo that. So do I just leave it, or should I email like the admissions and then tell them that he is like, you know, a full-time pharmacist and he like owns the store, and give him some more detail on that?
Good question. Sorry, I honestly froze halfway through you asking that question. So I think I got parts of it. So you submitted them as a professional in lieu of academic, and you're wanting to switch them to a different category?
Yeah, exactly.
Those together?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So have you fully submitted your application, or is it still in progress?
It's still in progress.
Okay. So what I would suggest is within the references page, you should see an option to exclude reference. This will like exclude that reference from your application for now, and then you can re-add them as the correct category, which from the sounds of it would be professional, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's just that he's already finished the reference.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he didn't save his answer, so I'm pretty sure he would have to rewrite it all over again.
Potentially. If you would like, actually, if you could maybe just send me your either send me your email address in like private chat here, or you can email our MBA admissions at McMaster.ca email, and then I can look into that further for you just to kind of see on our end what we could maybe switch around. Just once
sure,
they've
but
kind
I mean,
of fully...
I also just wanted to say that I hope that maybe it's not taken as that big of a deal, because if they can see that, you know, they received a solid reference, and they can like fact check that by calling or emailing or whatsoever. Do you think that it would be okay? Like, I'll let the admissions know as well, but I feel like it would be bad for me to just revoke it and then have him redo it, because he's really, really busy as well, and it took him,
Exactly.
you know, he took time out of his schedule to do that. So
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like, we wouldn't want people to kind of duplicate work unnecessarily. So I just need to kind of confirm one thing just in terms of matching the questions that are asked for that kind of reference, because it's not usually one that we utilize. So I'll just have to take a look at it, but it would by no means negatively affect your application. If we're able to do some switching around, if not, then that's okay. We can we're very flexible. We can go with what we have in that moment for stuff like that.
Perfect. Yeah.
But again, feel free to email the MBA admissions email, and I can look into it just a little bit further for you to make sure that I'm giving you kind of the full accurate answer for your situation. But yeah.
For sure. Thank you so much.
No stress.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm stressing too much.
That's all good.
Thank you.
No problem. Ashmina, please, has a hand.
Hi, this is Ashima.
Hello. Hi.
First of all, thank you so much for such an informative session. So I really got to know some of the most important points that didn't click me. So it's better that I have not yet started the application. So yeah, I got to know many of the points. So my question was, like, since I have received the email for the GMARK waiver, so how should I submit the same document for the application?
Could you clarify your question for me a little bit?
Yeah, so for the GMAT waiver, I had submitted my LinkedIn profile and my resume, and according to that, I have received the GMAT waiver. So how should I notify in the application that I have received the waiver?
Oh, I see. Great question. So within your application, there are two spots that you will have to kind of complete a little bit differently than if you had a GMAT. And all those instructions can be found in that GMAT waiver document. So you'll see the nice, pretty certificate that says GMAT waiver XYZ. There's a second page to that document, and it fully lays out how to complete the test score and then where to upload that document as part of your application.
So I haven't received any type of PDF document from the university.
Did you receive an email that says something around the lines of like GMAT waiver approved?
Yeah.
So if you go back into that email, that statement, it looks kind of like a button. It'll then direct you to a PDF document that you can then download and then upload to your application.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. If you run into any issues accessing it, just let us know.
Sure. Thank you.
No problem. Last call for any remaining questions. Otherwise, we can go off and enjoy the rest of our day. And if you have any other questions after today, you're welcome to send them along to our emails. And then we can always set up another call with you. Alrighty. Double checking the chat again. Being none, I'm gonna end this nice little Zoom call here. Thank you all who are remaining for joining, and we'll see you all at the next one. Thanks.